Call the meeting officially to order. Welcome to meeting number 53 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance. Pursuant to the House Order of Reference of Thursday, May 27th, 2021, the committee is meeting to study Bill C-30, an act to implement certain provisions of the budget tabled in Parliament on April 19th, 2021, and other measures. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order January 25th of this year, and therefore members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. We'll be here. I sometimes hear those words in my sleep these days. We repeated them so many times. So we were at, I hate to start without Mr. Julian, without one party here, but we'll just see where we're at first. We had started a discussion, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Clerk, on Division 32, increased old age security pension and payment. It was page 286 of the bill. And I believe the lead for the department was Kristen Underwood. And there she is. Welcome, Ms. Underwood. So the floor is open for further discussion on Division 32. Ms. Jansen.
Yes, I was just wondering about the fact that what we're basically saying here is that 75-year-old and older will be getting a 10% pay raise. And so Canadians put money into this pension plan. This is their money, and their employers do the same. And yet suddenly in this proposal, we are going to give a raise to only those 75 and older. How can we legally change a program that is paid for by employers and employees, and suddenly the government is going to change the rules mid-game? How does that work? How is that possible?
Ms. Underwood, do you want to answer that? We're not dealing with CPP. We're dealing with the OAS. Go ahead.
Sorry. My apologies.
Yes, I was just going to say for clarification, Mr. Clerk, that indeed what we're talking about is an increase to the old age security pension, and that the OAS is funded through the Consolidated Revenue Fund and not funded by contributions from employees and employers.
Sorry, my apologies. Totally mixed up. Can you explain for me, how is it possible that we can decide to split seniors that way? Like, how does that make sense that you can say, okay, 75 and older, they need it more than 65 and older, and so therefore we're going to split them in half when OAS starts at 65? I mean, presumably they're all on OAS for the same reason.
I don't want to put senior people within the bureaucracy on the spot. That's more a policy question, Tamara. If you can find a way to ask it, that it's the government that decides on the policy. So I do think that's probably an unfair question for the bureaucracy to answer. They do the data, the details.
Okay. So why is the government proposing measures that would apply to all pensioners aged 75 and older, rather than measures that would specifically target low-income seniors?
Ms. Underwood?
So the measure is to target older seniors as a universal benefit for those 75 and older. We did do some data analysis, and it does show that there's higher levels of vulnerability for those who are 75 and older. We talked about some of those statistics here before. I could talk about them again, but the issue that we're trying to address here is the vulnerability, the increased vulnerability for older seniors.
Okay, Ms. Jansen. Okay, Mr. Julian is next, followed by Ms. Zerowitz. Mr. Julian.
Well, Mr. Chair, and thanks to my colleagues, Mr. Kelly and Mr. St. Marie. I just wanted to, because I just came out of the House from the tributes that we were paying to Bruce Stanton for his extraordinary career and 10 years as the Deputy Speaker. So I just want to clarify exactly how you were proceeding with this particular section.
We didn't. We really didn't. We just started. Because we didn't want to start without everyone as much as possible present. We're on Division 32, Clause 26. Division 32 as a whole, Clause 269. We will get to you have an amendment on Clause 272 and others as we go through it. So I think on this section, I don't think there's really any choice on Division 32, but to go clause by clause as we go through it. I think there's so many amendments that we pretty near need to go through it clause by clause. And as you want to block some of yours in the middle there, but
I would definitely be blocking 272 to 276. I'll flag that with you for our amendments that are coming up. But thank you. Thanks for clarifying.
Okay. Then back to questions for Ms. Underwood. Ms. Zerowitz.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. And I want to thank all the officials for being here today and for all their hard work. I wonder, Ms. Underwood, I know you've given us some of the statistics, but I do think it's important to have a little bit more on record in terms of the difference faced by seniors between the ages of 65 and 74. And the challenges or the data that we have for those 75 and over. So I know that you talked about 75 and over. We know that they have some more needs and challenges, but if you can maybe provide maybe some data that you have around between the ages of 65 and 74, and maybe a little bit more on the 75 plus.
Go ahead, Ms. Underwood.
Sorry, I am having some trouble with my computer jumbling as people are speaking, so I think I've got the question clearly, but if for some reason I crackle out, maybe my colleague Kevin Wagden could take over for me. So thank you for the question. So I believe you're asking a bit more detail about the statistics of the difference between those who are 60 to 60 or 65 to 74 and those 75 and older. So as we've mentioned before, close to half of those over 75 have a disability, and about 56% have severe disabilities. The majority of seniors over 75 are women, and those women tend to be more frequently live alone, more frequently have lower income. 4 in 10 are widowed. 6 in 10 have incomes below $30,000 a year. 4 in 10 receive the guaranteed income supplement, which is targeted for lower income seniors. They face higher health costs, and which are 2/3 higher for those 80 and over. So those are just a few of the figures that we have about the increased risk for those 75 and older.
And just as a follow-up, Ms. Underwood, just as part of this conversation that we're having today, is there any specific data that you might have that you might want to share that you think would be helpful for us to know for the group of seniors between the ages of 65 and 74?
So we did share some data earlier for the special study of the committee. We could reshare that again for the record. But I think that the information that I've given you is the same as what I've given before.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on Clause 269?
Just a quick question, Mr. Chair. So we'd heard at the last meeting that 85% of Canadian seniors have incomes below $50,000 a year. And so I'm wondering if our witnesses have any more information now in terms of how that relates to seniors 65 to 75. These are low incomes, and so to what extent is that 85% of Canadians earning less, Canadian seniors earning less than 50,000 are folks 65 to 75?
Mr. Wagden or Ms. Underwood?
So I can,
yes, go ahead.
I did, and I can
Kevin,
respond to Mr. Julian. So,
yeah.
And in fact, thank you very much for the question and the opportunity to clarify. I believe one of the other questions that you had asked during our last session was what was the age breakdown, the specific age breakdown of seniors 65 to 74 versus 75 and over. So I just wanted to clarify, or to make sure to clarify for the record, that according to our most recent administrative data, we had about 3.7 million OAS recipients who were between the ages of 65 and 74, whereas 2.8 were 75 and over. So just to ensure that that was clear, and I wanted to make sure to follow up with that.
Sorry, can I quickly just ask you then, what percentage then of those OAS recipients are under 75?
So again, that'd be 3.7 million OAS recipients in March of 2021.
I know the number. I'm just asking you for the percentage.
57% of the total client group would be between the ages of 65 to 74.
Okay. Thank you.
And with respect to income distribution, while I don't have it broken down by 65 to 74, I can say that about 55%. So just to supplement our previous figure, 55% of all of our OAS pensioners have incomes below $30,000. So just to add some more precision to the previous number that we had provided.
Okay, thank you. And these are important figures for us to know, because we have a very important decision to make. So 55% of Canadian seniors have incomes that are below 30,000.
That's correct.
And what percentage of those would be between 65 and 74?
Again, while I don't have a specific number there, what I can say is that our guaranteed income supplement benefit, which is our targeted income supplement, of the previous figure that I had provided for you, so the 57% are between 65 and 74, about 50% of those recipients, or pardon me, there's about 1.1 million that were on the guaranteed income supplement, so who had incomes low enough for that. And of the 2.8 million seniors who were getting an OAS pension who were 75 and older, it was again about 1.1 million that were receiving the guaranteed income supplement.
Okay, so an argument very clearly can be made that the needs are just as great from 65 to 74 as they are from 75 and older and over. That in fact that we're missing the vast majority or the majority of seniors who are living under the poverty line. So thank you for that. That helps to clarify the facts. We have an important decision to make soon about amendments, but I think it would be clear to all members of the Finance Committee that clearly we can't exclude most Canadian citizens living, Canadian seniors living in poverty from a budgetary measure that is supposed to help all Canadian seniors. So thank you.
Okay, that's it for questions on this point. Then shall clause, excuse me, shall clause 269 carry on division?
On division.
On division. Clause 270.
On division.
On division. Clause 271. Any questions?
On division.
Okay, clause 272, there is an amendment, and Mr. Julian, I have looked, and I know you said you'd like to block these. The rulings are, at least two of them, are substantially enough different that I'm pretty nearly going to go clause by clause with each amendment. But your argument can be made on the whole works, but I will have to do a separate ruling. At least on 272, 273, and 2.
I'll skip that.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Peter. Your amendment. Sorry, NDP 14.
Well, Mr. Chair, I think I will move all four of them, explain the rationale for all four of them, and appeal your decision as they come. But I'll start off by saying, of course, this committee has the right to do the right thing in terms of this legislation. And when we talk about rural recommendations in the past in minority governments, certainly with the famous Jack Layton budget, the government provided the rural recommendation for substantial changes in the initial budget when it became clear that those substantial changes would not pass the test of getting, without those substantial changes, it would not pass the test of getting through Parliament. So I'm very confident in saying that it is up to this committee to decide on whether these amendments should be voted on and carried forward. Now, the four amendments in question obviously address what we have just heard is a profound discrepancy that 57% of Canadian seniors are under the age of 75, that the majority of Canadian seniors live at what can only be stated as close to poverty level, $30,000 a year. That is a profoundly difficult income level, especially when we see the extent to which COVID and the pandemic has hit Canadian seniors. So there is simply no sense or logic to what the government is proposing. Proposing seniors 75 and over get a 10% bump in the OAS and a $500 bonus, when Canadians under 75 need it as desperately. There's just no sense, no logic. I think we've heard from our questions very clearly that the statistics and the facts show that for the committee to do the right thing, it is to extend the OAS increase to all seniors and to provide the one-time supports of $500 to all seniors. That is a slam dunk. Canadians who are listening to us would all agree this is the right thing to do. And Canadian senior groups have all intervened, including at this committee, saying that this makes absolutely no sense or logic, penalizes and hurts poor seniors who are under the age of 75. And for us to force them to spend 10 years before they can get a slightly more adequate income is beyond belief that a government would propose that and that a finance committee would say, that's okay. And I have certainly heard from the questions of my colleagues that they understand the dynamic, that we cannot discriminate between seniors. We now know that the imperative for seniors under 75 as well is as deep and profound as it is for seniors 75 and over. So that is why these four amendments would provide the $500 support to all seniors and ensure that the OAS increase goes to all seniors. I think we've heard compelling testimony, the answers to our questions. We should be, even if the government uses the procedural trick of saying, well, we're going to withhold a oral recommendation, we should be pushing them to provide that oral recommendation as they have done in the past and as the government has the right and responsibility, I would say, in this case to do.
Okay, I do have a couple of people online for questions, and I would ask, do you know what the cost of that might be? I'll go to Ms. Zurowitz if you want to think about that in the meantime. Ms. Zurowitz.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to hear what Mr. Saint-Marie says first before I go, if that's okay.
It's up to you, Mr. Saint-Marie.
Je tiens à remercier ma collègue Julie.
I would like to thank my colleague Julie for this introduction. Thank you, Mr. Julian, for the amendments that you are putting forward. Indeed, seniors tell us, and seniors groups, whom we heard before the committee, told us as well, that it makes no sense to create two groups of seniors. And even the president of FINA reminded us that very often seniors between 65 and 74 years of age have extra expenses. For example, often women without any private pension plans will lose their partners, will need to go to the hospital, have extra expenses. Statistics that the officials have provided us with clearly show that it's important not to create two categories of seniors. And I see that the committee could vote on these motions and call on the government to deal with this issue, a Ways and Means motion. So I fully support the motions here. These are very good ideas. That said, I would like a little more clarification, a little more clarity on NPDP 14. I would like to have Mr. Julian explain the details of the amendment he's proposing. Thank you, Chair.
We'll go to maybe to respond to that question before I go to Ms. Zerowitz. Mr. Julian, could you explain NDP 14 a little further?
15, 15.
Oh, NDP.
15, actually, I meant, Mr. Chair. Sorry.
All right. So I'm going to give a separate ruling on each. So I'll deal with NDP 14 first, and then I'll ask Mr. Okay, give it now, Peter. Give your response to NDP 15 now. Although it's a different chair's ruling, we'll have all the discussion now. Go ahead.
Merci, mon collègue, monsieur.
Thank you, kind colleague, Mr. Saint-Marie, for your question. When we discussed this matter with the legal team at the House of Commons, they said that we needed to put specifically within the clauses the mention of the age group, and that's why we have NDP 14 and, of course, NDP 16 and 17 as well, in order to define everywhere that age group 65 to 74 would be covered. NDP 15 removes the block. It's really part of the current text that would prevent us from proceeding as we wish. And the others are there to really ensure that we cover this age group. Thank you for your question.
Satisfied with the answer, Mr. St. Marie? Ms. Zerowitz. That's what you do in the House all the time, Gabriel. You put your hand up when a minister answers. Satisfied. Ms. Zerowitz, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, look, just in terms of the debate of these, there is no intention or desire to discriminate. So I don't agree with the premise of what Mr. Julian has said. And so I do think that everybody knows in every budget there are choices that always need to be made when there is limited dollars. I think that we heard very clearly from our officials that half of those over 75 have a disability, 56% are severe, 75% of them are women, they live longer and they have lower incomes. And so there's a desire to provide some additional support to this group. And so I guess maybe I'll end off maybe with a question to officials, and maybe that will be, I hope, helpful in this discussion, which is, I've lost my question, hold on. Is there research that shows how the cost for seniors increase once they pass the age of 75, and why financial assistance is useful at this moment?
Whoever wants to take it. Did you hear that, Ms. Underwood? Go ahead if you did. I know your computer's just so.
I did hear it, but I may turn to my colleague, Mr. Wagon. There is we have done some research. Kevin, do you want to give it a go?
Kevin, go ahead.
Pardon me, I was on mute. So just to read again some of the research that we've looked at, or that we looked at as part of this proposal, I think my colleague Kristen has touched on, but with respect to specific percentages, we do know that the percentage of OAS pensioners with incomes below $30,000, it's about half of seniors 65 to 74, but it's actually 59% for those who are 75 and older. We know that 39% of seniors 75 and over received the GIS, whereas only 29% of seniors between the ages of 65 and 74 received the GIS. And as we had spoken about, there was also the added issues that come into play with experience with disabilities, and then the fact that older seniors are less able to supplement their incomes with paid work. So the median employment income for a senior between the age of 65 and 74, the median is $10,000, whereas for a senior over the age of 75, it's only $720. And so that was the evidence that we looked at with respect to this proposal.
That's excellent information. Can I just clarify, Mr. Chair? You mentioned something 59%. Could you just repeat the data that you gave the first one? I missed it.
Sure. So according to the 2018 Canadian Income Survey, the percentage of OAS pensioners with incomes below $30,000, so the percentage of seniors between the ages of 65 and 74 with an income below $30,000 was 52%. That percentage increases for seniors 75 and over to 59%.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, then I believe we're completed the discussion on the several amendments, but I will give the ruling on NDP 14. And I'm bound by procedure and the rules of the House of Commons. So I may be a spoke in the wheel here, or a stick in the wheel. The ruling is this: the amendment attempts to apply the 10% increase of pensions mentioned in the bill for people who are 65 years old, where the bill provides for the increase at 75 years old, which would result in increasing payments from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. The amendment as proposed is inadmissible, as it requires a royal recommendation, since it does impose a new charge on the public treasury. So I rule it inadmissible. And I will have to deal with these one at a time. Mr. Julian.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. As I mentioned at the very beginning of this process, of course, the government has the responsibility to apply a royal recommendation when it's very clearly that they've erred, and they've erred in this case. We have seen in the past, and precedent shows that the government can provide a royal recommendation and can choose to do that. So it's not a question of being out of order. It's a question, I think, of the committee responding appropriately to what is a significant error in judgment. And so I would challenge your ruling on that basis, and allow the committee to decide whether we should move and vote on these amendments.
I'll write, and as I said, I will have to deal with them one at a time because there are somewhat different rulings. So, Mr. Clerk, there has been a challenge to the chair. If you want to poll on the chair's ruling, if you want to poll the committee, it's your game.
The question is, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? Ms. Derowitz?
Absolutely.
Mr. Fragiscatos?
Yes.
Ms. Bandian?
Yes.
Ms. Koutrakis?
Yes.
Mr. McLeod?
Yes.
Mr. Falk?
Yes.
Mr. Fast?
Reluctantly, yes.
Ms. Jansen?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie?
No.
Mr. Julian?
No.
Yeas pour 9, 9, nays contre 2, 2.
All right, the ruling is upheld. The motion is inadmissible. Shall clause 272 carry on division? On division?
On division.
On division.
On division. Then clause 273 in NDP 15. Is there anything more you want to say in NDP 15, Mr. Julian?
No, I think we had a fulsome debate, Mr. Chair. I'll await your ruling.
All right, the ruling is this. The amendment attempts to remove the limit of increase of pension that is in the Old Age Security Act. If adopted, the amendment would provide for an increase of pension for people aged 70 years old, which would result in increasing payments from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. The amendment as proposed is inadmissible as it requires a royal recommendation, since it imposes a new charge on the public treasury. Therefore, Chair's ruling is this amendment, NDP 15, is inadmissible.
And again, with respect, Mr. Chair, and I haven't done this on all the amendments, but this is a particularly egregious error in judgment by the government. So again, the government has the ability to provide a royal recommendation. I believe our duty is to consider the amendment and to push the government to provide that. So I will challenge your ruling with respect.
That is fine, and that is every bit you're right. Mr. Clerk, if you could poll the committee on the chair's ruling.
The question is, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? Ms. Derowitz?
Oui.
Mr. Fragis-Gatos?
Yes.
Ms. Bandayan?
Oui.
Madame Koutrakis?
Oui.
Mr. McLeod?
Yes.
Mr. Falk?
Yes.
Mr. Fast?
Yes.
Ms. Jansen?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie?
No.
Monsieur Julien?
No.
Yeas pour 9, 9, nays contre 2, 2.
Then the chair's ruling is upheld and the amendment is inadmissible. Shall clause 273 carry?
On division.
On division?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
The legislative clerk here?
Yep.
We still have NDP 16 that is on the same clause, 273.
Oh, correct. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. It's a good job you're paying attention. Okay, on still NDP 16, is there anything further you want to say on that, Mr. Julian?
Very clearly, what this would do is provide for 65 years of age and the compelling evidence, and our witnesses have all said the same thing. It's important to adopt this amendment.
Okay, this is the same ruling as related to 272, so that's why I was trying to ignore it, but I will read it in any event so that we're all clear on the record. The amendment attempts to apply the 10% increase of pensions mentioned in the bill for people who are 65 years old, where the bill provides for the increase at 75 years old, which would result in increasing payments from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. The amendment as proposed is inadmissible as it requires a royal recommendation since it imposes a new charge on the public treasury. Over to you, Mr. Julian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A new charge that is welcome and that the vast majority of Canadian seniors want to see. So with respect, again, this is a procedural tool that the government is using to repress amendments that improve errors that are made in legislation. And so with respect, I will challenge your ruling.
All right, we'll go back to the clerk and you let a poll the committee on the chair's ruling, Mr. Clerk.
The question is, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? Ms. Derowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Fragis-Gatos?
Yes.
Madame Bandayan?
Oui, Monsieur le Greffier.
Madame Koutrakis?
Oui.
Mr. McLeod?
Yes.
Mr. Falk?
Sustained.
Mr. Fast?
Yes.
Ms. Jansen?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie?
No.
Mr. Julien?
No.
Yeas pour 9, 9, nays contre 2, 2.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. So the ruling of the chair stands. Then we'll go to, without amendment, shall clause 273 carry? On division?
On division.
On division. Okay, we're to clause 274. Is there any questions on that one? All right, shall clause 274 carry on division?
On division.
On division.
Okay, clause 275. Shall clause No questions. Shall clause 275 carry on division?
On division.
On division. All right, we are to clause 276, and there is an NDP 17, Amendment 17. Anything further you want to add on that one, Mr. Julian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, just after your ruling.
Okay. And this ruling is a little different, but it amounts to the same result. The amendment provides for a unique $500 payment to pensioners who are 65 years old, where the bill provides for the same payment for pensioners 75 years or older, which would result in increasing payments from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. The amendment as proposed is inadmissible, as it requires a royal recommendation since it imposes a new charge on the public treasury. Over to you, Mr. Julian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And all four of these points of or rulings stem from the fact that the government doesn't want to provide seniors with the equitable supports that they need and wants to discriminate. It's bad legislation. Each of the rulings, Mr. Chair, that you've made are in the same optic, that the government is refusing to do the right thing, so is withholding a royal recommendation. So in this case, as with the others, our responsibility as committee members, I believe, is to listen to the powerful testimony that we've heard from seniors groups across the country saying that this discrimination should not be upheld, and that's why I challenge your ruling.
A point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I think that my colleague just said that the government made this ruling. I think it was you that made this ruling, and I just wanted to put that on the record.
Okay. All right. Yeah, but
point of order.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Julian.
The reality is, as Ms. Zarowitz knows very well, if the government provides the royal recommendation, it's not the amendments are not out of order. So yes, it's ultimately a government decision that the chair has to enforce.
Okay, we've had a little debate on the ruling, but we will go to the clerk and he will have to poll the committee on whether we uphold the ruling or not. Mr. Clerk.
The question is, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? Ms. Darowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Fragiskatos?
Yes.
Madame Bendayan?
Oui, Monsieur le greffier, et je vois que Monsieur Fraser est arrivé, alors je crois que c'est mon dernier vote.
Madame Koutrakis?
Oui.
Mr. McLeod?
Yes.
Mr. Falk?
Yes.
Mr. Fast?
Yes.
Ms. Jansen?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie?
No.
Monsieur Julian?
No.
Yeas pour 9, nays contre 2.
So the ruling of the chair is upheld and the amendment is inadmissible. Shall clause 276 carry on division?
On division.
On division. Thank you, Ms. Underwood and Mr. Wagden. Thank you very much. We'll now turn to Division 33, the Public Service Employment Act, and we have as a lead Miss Beattie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Good. Thank you very much for coming and waiting through a couple of nights likely. So do you want to give a quick explanation on Division 33, and then we'll see if there's any questions?
I'd be happy to. Mr. Chair, the Public Service Employment Act provides a foundation for staffing in the federal public service by creating a framework for nonpartisan public service where appointments are based on merit. It gives the Public Service Commission authority to make appointments, which in practice is usually delegated to deputy heads. This division amends the Public Service Employment Act to reduce and remove barriers to achieving diversity of the public service and enhancing the degree to which it embodies the principle of inclusion. I can turn to Clause 277 to begin with, which amends the preamble to add a commitment by the Government of Canada to an inclusive public service that reflects the diversity of Canada's population. Shall I continue with the other clauses?
We'll just start with that one. We'll see if there's any questions there, just for us trying to find on the bill. I believe we're on page 289 for those that are following by the way of the bill. So is there any questions on 277? Hearing none, shall clause 277 carry on division?
On division.
On division. 278, if we could, Ms. Beattie.
So clause 278 sub 1 amends the act to add a definition of equity-seeking groups, which will be defined as a group of persons who are disadvantaged on the basis of one or more prohibited grounds of discrimination within the meaning of the Canadian Human Rights Act. Clause 278 sub 2 amends the act by, did you want to pause after sub?
Yeah, no, go ahead. Explain 278 sub 2.
278 sub 2 adds subsection 5, which would include bias or barriers that disadvantage persons belonging to equity-seeking groups within the meaning of error, omission, or improper conduct for the purposes of investigations by the Public Service Commission and by delegated deputy heads.
Is there any questions on clause 278 by members? Hearing none, shall 278 carry on division?
On division.
Thank you. On division carried.
Clause 279.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Clause 279 amends the Act by adding a subsection to Section 17 so that the Commission may conduct audits related specifically to bias or barriers that disadvantage persons belonging to equity-seeking groups.
Any questions on that? 279? Hearing none, shall 279 carry on division?
On division.
Okay, 280.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I note that all of us, members of this committee, have received written briefing notes that effectively explain the different sections here, 280 all the way through to 287. I'd be prepared to allow this to go as a bundle.
Okay, then we'll ask Ms. Beattie to explain it all through as a bundle, and I believe Mr. Julian has a question. Did you have a question?
Oh, not a question, just a comment, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead.
I think that's a good proposal by Mr. Fest.
Okay,
He's mellowing.
It's good to see the official opposition and the NDP agreeing. Could we get an explanation on just the remainder of those clauses, Ms. Beattie, and then we'll go to a vote on seeing them all as one?
My pleasure. The remainder of the clauses will require review of new and revised qualification standards to include an evaluation of bias and barriers, require the design and selection of assessment methods to include an evaluation of bias and barriers, broaden the preference given to Canadian citizens in external advertised appointments to include permanent residents. They provide for transitional provisions related to the timing of the coming in and the coming into force of these sections.
Okay, is there any questions from committee members? I have one myself, Ms. Beattie. How do you see doing this? Do you have supervisors over the supervisors supervising the hiring officers, or how do you do this? How do you police this?
So they'll be done in different ways. For qualification standards, these are minimum requirements that are established by the employer. In this case, Treasury Board Secretariat's Office of the Chief Human Resources Officer, when they conduct reviews, will need to conduct the evaluation. For assessment methods, the Public Service Commission will be providing tools and supports and instructions for hiring managers about how to ensure the assessment methods have been evaluated and any barriers mitigated to the extent possible.
Okay, I see Ms. Zerowitz has a question.
Yes, just a quick one, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Can our officials just let us know which stakeholders support these revised provisions?
So we have conducted consultations and engagement with different groups of stakeholders. In particular, we had spoken with the employee diversity networks within the public service to understand the concerns of their members about the staffing process. We also did conduct consultations with bargaining agents to understand the challenges their members were facing, and with senior officials for diversity and inclusion. We took into account the concerns that they had raised in crafting these amendments.
Okay, everyone satisfied? Then we shall go.
Can I just ask one quick follow-up, Mr. Chair? Sorry, I know we want to go on.
Ahead.
Has this, and maybe just one final question, Ms. Beatty, has this measure been informed by the findings on diversity detailed in this year's Public Service Employee Survey?
So this was prepared in advance of the results of the Public Service Employee Survey being available.
Thank you.
Okay, then thank you. Shall clauses 280 to 287 carry on division?
On division.
On division. Thank you all. And thank you, Ms. Beatty. I don't believe you're here for the next one. No, thank you, and thank for being here all along. Division 34, Early Learning and Childcare, and we have Miss Karen Hall. There you are. I see you, Karen.
Hello, Mr. Chair.
If you want to give us an explanation, go ahead, and you will have to hold your mic up for the interpreters.
Thank you. So please just let me know if there are issues with the sound quality. So I am here to speak to clause 288. This clause provides for the appropriation of funding for early learning and childcare to provinces and territories for fiscal year 2021-2022. It includes three elements. First, statutory authority for payments to be made to provinces or territories in connection with the bilateral agreement for early learning and childcare in this fiscal year. Second, it provides that the minister may establish terms and conditions in respect of those payments. And third, it provides that the maximum total amount that may be paid to the provinces and territories is $2.95 billion. The purpose of the statutory appropriations for this fiscal year is to ensure that the federal government is able to transfer funding to provinces and territories as soon as bilateral agreements are reached. And funding for future years will be provided through voted appropriations on an annual basis through the estimates process, as has been the case for the existing bilateral agreements. I'm happy to take your questions.
Oh, okay. I just want to be sure the number. It's 2.948 and 82 million. 2,948 million, right?
That's right.
Yep. You guys in public service round it higher than I do. I usually round it lower. Mr. Fraser first, and then Mr. Fast.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to those who've been helping us shepherd through the meeting while I was absent. I appreciate your support. On my question relates to the figure that the Chair just referred to, 2.9 billion. Obviously, the commitment in the recent budget for the National Early Learning and Childcare framework is in excess of 30 billion over the next number of years. Can you just give us some clue as to how the $2.9 billion figure was arrived at, and what goal it's seeking to achieve?
Okay, thank you for the question. So, Mr. Chair, within the $30 billion that Mr. Fraser referred to, there is $27.2 billion over 5 years for provinces and territories. Within that, the $2.9 billion is the first year of that 5 years of funding. With regard to how the funding was arrived at, I think that is perhaps not a question for me today. So I think I'll just leave that there.
Okay. Mr. Fraser, you okay?
Yes, I'm wondering. In effect, there's been a couple of commitments made by the government in respect of the childcare strategy. One is to reduce the cost by a half in the next year. And I'm wondering if this 2.9 billion will get us there, or whether there will be additional supports required through the estimates that would obviously have to go through the parliamentary process before we'll be able to see that goal achieved.
Okay. Thank you for the question. My internet connection is a little bit choppy, so I'm hopeful that you're able to see and hear me. So, Mr. Fraser, that's correct. In Budget 2021, the budget articulated a number of goals or commitments for childcare. And perhaps first among those were commitments related to fee reduction. And so in the budget, the government outlined that it was providing funding to provinces and territories that would be sufficient to reduce the cost of regulated childcare on average by 50% by the end of 2022, and then to reduce the cost to $10 a day by 2025-26. And so this statutory appropriation will be part of the funding that will support achieving those objectives. In the short run, achieving the 50% reduction by the end of 2022, and then in the longer run, the 50% reduction for 25-26.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fast.
Yes, Mr. Chair, more comment. I believe, Ms. Hall, you mentioned that future appropriations would be done through the estimates process to fund the strategy, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, the problem is what we're finding is that the estimates process is woefully inadequate in that ministers appear and are not prepared to even answer one question when dozens and dozens are raised. So I guess my charge to the Liberal members of our committee and to you, Ms. Hall, if you could pass on to the ministers of this government that when they appear on estimates and they have their officials arrayed behind or in front of them, that they come prepared to actually answer questions, not just dodge and skip and jump and hop all over the place, because that's disrespectful. It's a lack of accountability. I think that's a message that should go back, especially to the finance minister.
Okay, we've noted that, Mr. Fast. I've been through a lot of parliaments, you know, but I'll make no further comment. Ms. Zerowitz. You're muted, Julie.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank Ms. Hall to her and her team for her hard work. My question is around negotiations with provinces and territories. How will that be set up?
Thank you for the question. So, Mr. Chair, the intention is that the federal government will enter into negotiations with provinces and territories at the earliest opportunity to begin to implement the Canada-wide childcare system. I should underline that there is already a foundation that has been laid for those agreements. There are 3-year bilateral agreements that were signed in 2017-18 with all provinces and territories, with a unique agreement for Quebec. Those agreements were extended last fiscal year and are actually in the process of being extended again as we speak. And so we will build on that foundation as we begin negotiations with provinces and territories to begin to implement these commitments that the government has made.
Can I ask one more question, Mr. Chair?
You can.
Thank you. The Minister of Finance, she set up a task force on women in the economy. Could you relay what role they play in informing the government strategy on childcare moving forward?
Thank you for the question. So what I can speak about today is a little bit about the support for the Minister for Families, Children and Social Development. Certainly the Minister of Finance has created the task force for women in the economy. But at this point in time, I'm not familiar with their work on childcare. So I would work with my Department of Finance colleagues and would undertake to come back to the committee with a written response with more information on that. What I can tell you is that the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development has had an expert panel on early learning and childcare data and research for about the past 2 years that has studied the evidence base that's in place for early learning and childcare and has provided other advice related to a Canada-wide childcare system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'll go to Mr. Fraser, but I would say, Ms. Hall, I happened to be around when the negotiations were on between Ken Dryden and the provinces in 2004, 2005, and those negotiations are never easy. But we did have an early learning and childcare program at the time. Mr. Fraser.
Mr. Chair, I think you were around when Ken Dryden won the Conn Smythe Trophy before he won Rookie of the Year as a member of Parliament. But look, we can learn from your experience. Ms. Hall, I wanted to follow up on the investment in childcare. The economic argument behind the policy is essentially that the return on investment is greater than the cost of making the investment. There's obviously a social argument as well in terms of equitable participation in the economy should parents and disproportionately women who have been impacted by a lack of access to care should choose to. This is a lot of money, nearly $3 billion for the next year. I had an interesting exchange with Nick Leswick from the Department of Finance earlier in this the study of this bill. And he indicated that depending on who you ask, there are some folks who have the view that the actual revenue to government could be greater than the cost. I think there are a few who would argue that the increase in GDP would be less than the cost of making the investment. I'm curious if you can offer insight onto the economic impact of this proposed investment and whether we should expect to see returns either through an increased GDP or in fact increased revenue to government as a result of more people contributing to the economy and paying taxes.
Thank you for the question. So, Mr. Chair, the budget did outline the economic and fiscal returns to investments in childcare, and pointed to a range of studies that have indicated that for every dollar invested in childcare, the return can be anywhere from about $1.50 to, I think it was $2.80. So there are a range of studies out there. Many are based on the experience in Quebec, but others take a different perspective or are grounded in different work. And what I would say is that these studies look at both the GDP growth and then also the revenue growth that translates into. As more affordable childcare is provided, there are secondary earners within their families who are able to be drawn into the labor force. And so, as childcare is less expensive, they're able to make the decision to work. And as a result, there are increased tax revenues that come about. And with those, the investments in childcare are set off by this return on investment.
Okay, thank you. I see no further questions on clause 288. Shall 288 carry on division? Ed, you're muted. I'd like to have you on the record. On division, it is. I'm beginning to be able to read your lips, I read. Division 35, benefits. Thank you, Ms. Hall. Before you're gone, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Division 35. The lead will be Catherine Demers, and it is on benefits and leave. So, Ms. Demers, if you
Thank
could,
you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Catherine Demers, the Director General of Employment Insurance Policy at Employment and Social Development Canada. I will present Division 35, clauses 289 to up to 301 with my colleague Barb Moran, who will also present some of these clauses with respect to the Canada Labor Code. I would like, if possible, to invite also my colleague George Ray to answer questions as we go through the clauses.
That's not a problem. Bring them. The clerk will bring them in.
Everybody's already in the meeting room, sir.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Merce.
I'm realizing that I may not be on camera. My
No, you're not.
apologies.
We see your name though.
My apologies.
There you are. We see you in person. Go ahead.
Thank you. So as I was saying, Division 35 would amend the Canada Recovery Benefits Act and the Canada Labour Code in order to temporarily increase the duration of the Canada Recovery Benefit and the Canada Recovery Caregiving Benefit. Just a little bit of context. On September 27, 2020, as part of the transitioning from the CERB, the government introduced 3 temporary benefits available until September 25, 2021 to provide income support to Canadian workers affected by COVID-19. The Canada Recovery Benefit, Canada Recovery Caregiving Benefit, and the Canada Recovery Sickness Benefit. In March, just a few months ago, the government increased the number of weeks available under each. For the Canada Recovery Benefit and the Canada Recovery Caregiving Benefit, this was a 12-week extension, increasing the maximum duration of the benefits from the initial 26 weeks to up to 38 weeks available for claims made between September 27th, 2020 and September 25th, 2021. The amendments proposed here would further extend the CRB and CRCB, Canada Recovery Caregiving Benefit, I will be using acronyms if that's okay, in June to ensure that those who begin to exhaust their 38 weeks of benefits continue to have access to income supports as the recovery takes hold, and would provide authority as well to make potential additional extension in the fall if needed. So Clause 289 relates to eligibility conditions for the CRB. Subclauses 289, 1 and 2 would amend the CRB Act to allow EI exhaustees, so those who would have used all of their 50 weeks of EI benefits, to be eligible for the CRB in the event there should be an additional extension of the CRB after September 25th. For example, by allowing their EI income from regular benefits or a combination of regular and special benefits to count toward the $5,000 income threshold to qualify for the Canada Recovery Benefit if their EI benefit period was established on or after September 27, 2020. Subclauses 289, 4 and 5 add a new eligibility condition for those who apply for more than 42 weeks or those who apply for the first time after July 18th to file an income tax return for the 2019 or 2020 taxation years. Should I continue to clause 290?
Yes.
Yeah, you can do clause 290, and then we have an amendment on 291. So do 290 as well.
This clause requires applicants to attest that they meet each of the eligibility conditions, including the new ones introduced in clause 289.
Okay, is there any discussion on clauses 289? I think we got agreement to go in 289 and 90 at the same time. Is there any discussion, Mr. Fraser?
Yeah, just a nuance I hadn't actually picked up until your comments. I'm just interested in the interplay between someone's exhausted their EI claim and seeks to subsequently apply to the Canada Recovery Benefit. One of the conditions of the Canada Recovery Benefit is that the applicant also lost their income or work as a result of COVID-19. Does that criteria also apply to someone who's exhausted their EI, or is there a presumption that if you've run out of EI, you're eligible? And if not, I'm curious, just more broadly, what mechanism is being used to investigate an individual applicant's claim that their job loss was due to COVID-19?
So thank you for the question, and Mr. Chair. In the context where there should be an extension of the CRB, further extension in the fall, this amendment would allow EI exhaustees to apply. They would not be transferred automatically. So they would need to apply to the CRB and attest to all of the eligibility criteria, as in the case as other applicants. But there would be a new flexibility applied that would allow to count their EI income towards their income eligibility, and as well to make sure that even if they have still an open benefit period remaining, that they could still apply for the CRB, but they would still have to attest like anybody else.
Okay, I think that satisfies the questions. Shall clauses 289 and 290 carry on division?
On division.
On division. Then we'll go to clause 291, if you want to give us a quick explanation, and then we have an amendment from Mr. St. Marie.
Mr. Chair, would you agree if I put together 291 and 292 because they are related? They deal with the extension.
I think with the permission of the committee, we're okay, so go ahead.
These clauses include amendments to provide an additional 12 weeks of Canada Recovery benefits to increase the maximum weeks available from 38 to 50 weeks or 25 two-week periods. The first 4 of these additional 12 weeks would be paid at $500 per week. The remaining 8 weeks of this extension would be paid at an amount of $300 per week claimed. This means that those who extend their weeks of CRB beyond 42 weeks, as well as new claimants who apply for the first time on or after July 18th, would receive the $300 per week benefit available up until September 25th, 2021.
Okay, then is there any explanation on the question, on the explanation before we go to Mr. St. Marie's motion or amendment, and we also have one from the NDP. Mr. St. Marie.
Oui, merci. Donc.
Yes, thank you. If I'm not mistaken, the Bloc Québécois amendment is word for word the same as what's going to be put forward by the NDP. So I think Mr. Julian will be able to add to what I have to say. Here the argument is that the CRB requires claimants to look for work, the equivalent of what's requested for them to qualify for EI. So only people who can't find a job continue to receive this benefit. So we feel that it's not necessary to reduce the financial coverage, the monetary coverage offered under the program. We are requesting that it remain at $500 per week after July.
Mr. Julian?
Yes, the 2 amendments are very similar. And the reality is we can't be slashing benefits from people who, at this point, with the third wave, hitting our shores, people who still are unable to find work should not see a massive slashing of their benefits. That's something certainly that we've heard as well as a committee. And so in this respect, I think it's very clear. If we're listening to the witnesses and listening to the concerns that people have raised about the slashing of these benefits at such a critical time, in the midst of a third wave, but also, as you know, Mr. Chair, with the possibility, tragically, of a fourth wave that we're now seeing, new variants coming in. Why would we deny people the wherewithal to put food on the table or keep a roof over their head by slashing benefits at this time? It's no time to do a victory lap. It's no time to say, okay, everything's done. We can wrap up supports. As we've heard consistently and repeatedly at this committee, it is important to extend those supports. And as Mr. St. Marie said, these are people who are unable to find work. So we're not talking about people that are not in need. We're talking about people that are in need, have to put food on the table, have to keep a roof over their head. And the slashing of the benefit means that in so many tragic cases, they will be unable to keep that roof over their head. And we've seen growing homelessness through this pandemic. We should be providing support so that fewer people become homeless and impoverished during this pandemic, not slashing benefits in a way that puts more of them out on the street and puts more of them unable to feed their families. Two other points I'd like to make, Mr. Chair, on this. First off, food banks are absolutely overwhelmed, which shows the magnitude of the need right now. Just heard from a food bank this week that is struggling to keep up with unprecedented demand. And at the same time, Mr. Chair, as you well know, this government provided $750 billion in liquidity supports to the big banks. The contrast I think people see, it is striking. Let us not be mean-spirited with people that desperately need these supports, and let's not slash supports at this critical point, the third wave of the pandemic.
Okay, then we've heard the explanation on the amendment, and I will have to give a chair's ruling here. The amendment attempts to remove paragraphs 8.1 and 8.1 and 1.1 in clause 291 of the bill. The effect would be to revert back to the existing text of the Canada Recovery Benefits Act, which provides for a payment of $500. Since the bill provides for a decrease of these payments, this amendment, if adopted, would result in increasing payments from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. The amendment as proposed is therefore inadmissible as it requires a royal recommendation since it imposes a new charge in the public treasury. And I think as Mr. Julian and Mr. St. Marie mentioned, this ruling applies to both the PQ7 and NDP 18 as well. So the amendment is inadmissible under the rules. Any challenges on that one? Everyone seems quiet. There's no challenge.
Monsieur Président, je vais demander.
Mr. Chair, I will ask Mr. St. Marie if he has anything to add. And if he doesn't, I do.
Okay.
Okay, you do.
He's a very polite member of Parliament. I'm less polite. The government should be doing this. The government could provide a royal recommendation on this. It's outrageous that it is choosing to slash benefits at such a critical time, particularly when they've been so amazingly generous with Canada's big banks and Canada's billionaires. It's an outrage, quite frankly. So yes, I will challenge your ruling on that basis. A government that actually cared about the people that are being affected by COVID would not be doing this.
Polite or not, Mr. Julian, you speak from the heart. Ms. Zerowitz, there's a challenge to the chair, so I'll have to take that first, and then I'll go to you. Mr. Clerk, if you want to poll the committee on the chair's decision.
The question is, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? Ms. Derowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Fragiscatos?
Yes.
Mr. Fraser?
Yes.
Madame Koutarkis?
Oui.
Mr. McLeod?
Yes.
Mr. Falk?
Yes.
Mr. Fast?
Yes.
Ms. Jansen?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Monsieur St. Marie?
Non.
Mr. Julian?
No.
Yes pour 9, nays contre 2.
Okay, the ruling stands. Ms. Zerowitz, you had your hand up. Is it on clause 290?
No, it's okay, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I'll pass for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then shall clause 291, so I make sure I'm not missing 290. Shall clause 291 carry on division?
On division.
On division. Okay. And I believe you spoke on 292 at the same time, Mr. Mears. Shall clause 292 carry on division as well?
On division.
Okay. Clause 293, Mr. Mears.
Clause 293 would add a new section 9.1 in the CRB Act to specify that if the week during which an EI claimant exhausts her EI regular benefits or a combination of regular and special benefits in the middle of a CRB 2-week period, then that person may receive a payment of $300 to avoid a 1-week period without income, provided the person meets the other eligibility criteria of the CRB. So in other words, ensuring that if EI exhaustees apply for the CRB, they do not face a 1-week income gap if their EI ends in the middle of a 2-week CRB period. And that relates to the clause 289 I was describing at the beginning in the event there should be an extension of the CRB in the fall.
Okay, any questions on that? No questions. Shall clause 293 carry on division?
On division.
On division. 294.
This clause would increase the maximum number of weeks the Canada Recovery Caregiving Benefit for the Canada Recovery Caregiving Benefit from 38 to 42. 4 extra weeks available starting June 19th to July 18th. These additional 4 weeks would be at the same current rate of $500 per week. And this is accompanied by a corresponding amendment to the Canada Labour Code, which we will talk about in a moment.
Any questions on 294? Shall 294 carry on division? On division?
On division.
Okay, on division carried. Clause 295.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Would you be prepared to consider grouping 295 all the way through to 302?
Absolutely. We'll get an explanation from Mr. Mears on them all, and then we'll see if there's any questions, and we'll go to a vote collectively. Mr. Mears on 295 through to 302.
Absolutely, my pleasure. If you agree, I will do 295, and Ms. Moran will proceed with the other clauses which relate to the Canada Labour Code.
Okay.
Clause 295, which is also in the context of amendments to the Canada Recovery Benefit Act, proposes to amend the Act by adding a new regulatory making authority to extend the eligibility period for benefits under the CRB Act up to November 20th, 2021, should they be needed, as announced in the budget.
Ms. Moran, on the was it Ms. Moran on the rest? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So clauses 296 through to 302 align with the changes to the CRCB, so the Canada Recovery Caregiving Benefit, to extend job-protected leave for the federally regulated private sector from 38 to 42 weeks if unable to work due to caregiving responsibilities due to COVID-19, and also changes the repeal date to match the new date prescribed by regulation on which the Canada Recovery Caregiving Benefit and the Canada Recovery Sickness Benefit aren't available. So it covers various changes that relate to the federally regulated private sector.
Okay, is there any questions on that? Seeing none, then nobody's up. All right, shall clauses 295 to clause 302 carry on division?
On division.
On division. Thank you very much, Ms. Demers, Ms. Moran, and Mr. Saint-Amand. Thank you very much. And I believe there's Mr. Ray here and Mr. Nandy. I'm not sure where. Oh, you're ready for the next one. Okay, thank you very much, folks. Then turning to Division 36, benefits and leave related to employment. Miss Mandy, you're up to explain clause 303.
Thank you, Chair. I hope you can all hear me appropriately. My name is Mona Nandy. I am the Executive Director of Employment Insurance Policy at Employment and Social Development Canada. And I'm here with you today to present clauses 303 to 361, which propose amendments to the Employment Insurance Act, the Canada Labour Code, and the Employment Insurance Regulations. I am joined by my colleague, Barbara Moran, who will speak to, again, the proposed amendments to the Canada Labour Code, as well as by several colleagues including Catherine Demers, who's just on for Division 35, as well as others like George Ray and Benoit Kedia and Michael McPhee to help answer questions that you may have regarding Division 36. So just some additional context on Division 36, it proposes a series of amendments that I will be speaking to relating to the Employment Insurance Act and the Employment Insurance Regulations that can be grouped in 4 categories. The first would be those amendments that would maintain more flexible access to employment insurance benefits for a period of 1 year while the job market continues to recover from the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic. The second would be those EI temporary measures that are otherwise expiring in September 2021 related to seasonal claimants and fishers. So the measures included in this bill would extend those temporary measures that are otherwise expiring. The third set of proposed amendments would continue training supports and integrity actions related to the EI emergency response benefit. And the final set of changes in Division 36 would make permanent changes to enhance EI sickness benefits. So that's just an overview before I move into clause by clause, if that's okay, Chair.
That's good. Go ahead, clause by clause.
Okay, so starting with clause 303. So this 303 subclause 1, this subclause repeals the definitions of major attachment claimant and minor attachment claimant, and the objective of this subclause is to support the establishment of a new national entrance requirement of 420 hours of insurable employment for claimants seeking EI special benefits for a 1-year period starting September 26, 2021.
Okay, any questions on clause 303? And we're in page 300 of the bill. I don't see any questions. Shall clause 303 carry on division?
On division.
On divisions. Clause 304, if you could give us an explanation, and then we have an NDP 19. Go ahead.
Definitely, Mr. Chair. So there are numerous subclauses to clause 304. So the first subclause, clause 1, establishes that all claimants seeking EI regular and special benefits claims must have at least 420 hours of insurable employment in their qualifying period in order to qualify for benefits. And the objective here is to support the establishment, again, of this new national entrance requirement of 420 hours of insurable employment for both regular and special benefits for a 1-year period starting September 26, 2021. Subclause 2 would return the sections of the EI Act that I have just spoke about to their original language and operations beginning on September 25th, 2022, as per the expiry of that 1-year period. Subclause 3 would remove the qualification requirement table based on the regional rate of employment that is outlined in Section 7, Sub 2, Sub B of the EI Act. And the objective here is to remove the qualification requirements dependency on regional rates of employment. Again, subclause 4 sort of reverts the sections of the EI Act that were listed that I've just mentioned in subclause 3 to their original language and operations beginning on September 25th, 2022, again with the end of the 1-year period. So that concludes clause 304.
Okay, and I have an NDP 19, Mr. Julian, if you want to go there. And just I know Elizabeth May, I've got the bill in front of you. You have an amendment here as well at some point. Don't let me miss that when we get to...
Well, I'm on page 342 when you get there, Mr. Chair. It's where my amendment falls.
It came in late, and so I don't have it in my notes. Mr. Julian, if you want to explain your NDP 19, I'll give you a ruling.
Thank you. I don't doubt that, Mr. Chair. This would lower the qualifying period, so ensuring that we have a national threshold of 360 hours for EI. this is something that we've heard in testimony is very much needed and would make a difference in terms of easing accessibility to benefits that people desperately need.
Okay, is there nothing further to add there? All right, then my ruling is this, which you're expecting. The amendment attempts to reduce the number of insurable employment hours necessary to obtain benefits under the Employment Insurance Act from 420 to 360 hours. The effect would be that more people would have access to these benefits, which would result in increasing payments from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. The amendment as proposed is inadmissible as it requires a royal recommendation since it imposes a new charge on the public treasury. So I rule it inadmissible.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The key word that you used is this would give more people access to benefits. It's a sad testament that you're being forced as chair to enact the government's refusal to provide more supports and more access to benefits. So I certainly don't hold it against you, Mr. Chair. I know that it's the government that is forcing you to say those words through their practices and their refusal to put a royal recommendation in place.
Chair.
But with that, I will challenge.
Okay, Mr. Fast, you had a point of order?
No.
Okay, it does require, the reality is it does require a royal recommendation, more money out of the federal treasury. So the challenge ruling has been chaired.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, it was you. I thought it was Mr. Fast. Okay.
No, that's fine. Ahead. Although I'm sure he shares the concern that I have, which is Mr. Julian put some things on the record that were not accurate by any means, and to defend the chair here. I know you're modest, Mr. Chair. You're not going to get in the way of Mr. Julian making an argument, letting his opinions cloud what are the facts.
Well, I don't think it's a point of order. I think it is a debate. I don't mind being challenged, and so we'll leave it at that. Not get into a strenuous debate. I have to follow the rules, and that's what it is. So on the challenge to the chair, Mr. Clerk.
The question is, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? Ms. Derowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Fragiscatos?
Yes.
Mr. Fraser?
Yes.
Ms. Koutrakis?
Yes.
Mr. McLeod?
Yes.
Mr. Falk?
Sure, one more time.
Mr. Fast?
Yes.
Ms. Jansen?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie?
No.
Mr. Julian?
No.
Yeas pour 9, nays contre 2.
The ruling of the chair has been upheld, so the motion is inadmissible. The amendment is inadmissible on clause. Mr. Fast, you have your hand up. Is it on clause 304?
No, it's on 305 to 307.
Okay.
I'd be glad to bundle those. Okay,
wait till we vote on 304 first. Shall 304 carry on division?
On division.
On division. Do I see any disagreement on bundling 304 to 307? I see none.
305.
305 to 307. Could we get an explanation, Ms. Nandy, on those or whoever, and we will vote on them.
Definitely, Mr. Chair. So clause 305 simply continues the objective of ensuring that EI claimants with violations are no worse off by selecting the hours of penalties that correspond to the highest rates of unemployment, so more than 13%. Clause 306, the objective of this clause is simply to make sure that when stipulating for the period of between September 26, 2021 and September 24th, 2022, claimants with monies paid on separation, so that could be vacation pay or severance pay, can receive EI benefits at the same time, thereby increasing access to the EI system. And similarly, that's the same objective for clause 307.
Okay, any questions on those three clauses? Shall clauses 305 to 307 carry on division?
On division.
On division.
On division. Good. Carried. On clause 308, if we could get an explanation, and we have two amendments on that, I believe.
Certainly. Yep. So again, Mr. Chair, clause 308 has several sub-clauses, so I'll go through them one by one. For the first subclause, clause 1 outlines the maximum number of weeks of entitlement for regular EI benefits that an eligible seasonal worker claimant can receive, as outlined in the new Schedule of 5. This subclause also outlines a criteria by which a seasonal worker is eligible to receive these maximum weeks of entitlement. Those include a claimant who has a benefit period that falls within the period beginning on September 26, 2021 and ending on October 29th, 2022. At the beginning of the benefit period, the claimant is a resident of a region described in Schedule 6 of the BIA. And then in the 5 years prior to the beginning of the benefit period, the claimant had demonstrated that they were a seasonal worker. For example, they had 3 benefit periods established with various presumptions, the parameters around the establishment and beginning of the benefit periods. So the objective of this subclause is to replicate in legislation the parameters of the pilot project relating to increased weeks of benefits for seasonal workers, which is commonly known as pilot project number 21, and that is included in the EI regulations as of September 26, 2021. That's subclause 1. Subclause 2 increases the maximum number of weeks for which benefits may be paid because of a prescribed illness, injury, or quarantine from 15 weeks to 26 weeks. And the objective of this subclause is to provide more weeks of sickness benefits to claimants on a permanent basis. I do realize, though, that I've moved on, and I think there is an amendment, as you were saying, Mr. Chair, on subclause 1. So I wondered if you wanted me to continue or just pause there.
Oh, maybe finish your clause, and then we'll come back to the to each of the amendments, and so that we're done with the discussion on 308 before we get to the amendments.
Certainly. So subclause 3 replaces subsection 12.8 of the EI Acts, the reference in that subsection to major attachment claimant with claimant as part of the removal of the definition of major attachment claimant for the EI Act for that 1-year period beginning on September 26, 2021 and ending on September 24th, 2022. And as previously mentioned with subclause 303, the objective of the subclause is to support the establishment of the new national entrance requirement of 420 hours of insurable employment for special benefits for a 1-year period as of September 26, 2021. And finally, subclause 4 returns the sections of the EI Act listed in the previous subclause 3 to their original language and operations beginning September 25th, 2022, which is the end of the expiry of the EI temporary measures for a 1-year period. So that's it for clause 308.
Thank you very much for that fairly lengthy explanation. We'll turn to Mr. St. Marie on motion BQ8.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I will tell you first about BQ8, and then I will later get to BQ9, but they're both in the same general direction that they're heading, filling out what, or in line with what the National Committee of Welfare Recipients told us for the period beginning on the 28th of September. Next, Mr. Serret had told us that there are 2 blind spots in this enactment, and what the amendment would change would be to ensure that the length of the benefits would be 50 weeks. We know that the old version of employment insurance is not working right. It should be changed, and we're waiting for a proper change. We're in a pandemic. There are a number of risks At present, the economy has not yet recovered, and we want to ensure that the weeks of entitlement remain at 50. And this is in particular for seasonal workers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. St. Marie. The chair's ruling on this amendment is that the amendment attempts to extend the duration of the pilot project number 21 until September 2022. The effect would be that more people would have access to an increased number of weeks for a longer period of time, which would result in increased payments from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. The amendment as proposed is inadmissible as it requires a royal recommendation since it imposes a new charge on the public treasury. So I rule it inadmissible. Can we go to NDP 20? No challenge there. NDP 20.
Okay.
Mr. Julian.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And as I stated at the outset, I have utmost respect for you and have repeated that consistently through Finance Committee. And Mr. Fregascatos took objection to the reality, which is these royal recommendations. The government withholding a royal recommendation puts you in an uncomfortable position where you're having to rule out of order improvements that would make a big difference in people's lives. So I would have to disagree with Mr. Fregascatos that this is something that's acceptable. The government should be walking the talk and should be accepting these improvements that would make such a difference in people's lives. That is also the case for NDP 20 and 22, and I'll present both of them together. We have heard through the course of this, the witnesses that we had in the testimony, that the 26 weeks is simply not enough time to get through an illness. This is from Liberal witnesses that came forward, and when we asked them, opposition members asked them, is 26 weeks sufficient? Liberal witnesses called by the Liberal Party said, no, actually, it would be much more important to have a full year of benefit support when people are going through critical illnesses such as cancer, recovering, the time, the requirements, the demands on people when they are trying to get through these health crises are enormous. And so when Liberal witnesses brought forward to our committee agree with the opposition that we should be looking to 50 weeks, I think that is a fundamentally important recommendation that we should uphold as a committee. And so that is why both NDP 20 and NDP 22 have been put forward. And as you know, Mr. Chair, the labor movement nationally and a variety of other organizations are all calling for this as well. So this is very germane to another measure within the Budget Implementation Act that fell far short of what's actually needed. And now is the time for us to rectify that error.
Mr. Chair, unmute yourself.
That works better. Thank you very much, Mr. Fast. The amendment attempts to extend the number of weeks of benefits for prescribed illness, injury, or quarantine from 26 to 50, which would result in increased payments from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. The amendment as proposed is inadmissible as it requires a royal recommendation since it imposes a new charge on the public treasury. Okay.
So, point of order.
Go ahead.
So thank you, Mr. Chair, and with deep respect for your role as chair and not a lot of respect for the government action on refusing a royal recommendation, I would challenge your ruling.
All right, Mr. Clerk, there's been a challenge to the chair's ruling. You could poll the committee, please.
The question is, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? Ms. Darowitz.
Yes.
Mr. Fragiscatos.
Yes.
Mr. Fraser.
Yes.
Ms. Koutrakis.
Yes.
Mr. McLeod.
Yes.
Mr. Falk.
Muted, Ted.
Ted,
Ted,
you're muted.
I think
You're
that's
muted.
a no.
You're
I think
muted,
it's a no.
Ted.
I
yes,
hear a no.
yes, yes.
Mr. Falk, yes. Mr. Fast?
Again, reluctantly, yes.
Ms. Jansen?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie?
Non.
Monsieur Julien?
No.
Yeas pour 9, 9. Nays contre 2, 2.
Okay, the ruling has been upheld, and so the amendment is inadmissible. Shall clause 308 carry on division?
On division.
On
On
division.
division. A new clause is proposed for 308.1 by the NDP, NDP 21, Mr. Julian.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we've already dealt with this under the block amendment. It's a slightly different approach, but the same thing, to include the standard denominator. As I mentioned earlier, I wouldn't be challenging all of the rulings on this, but I think it is clear that this is something that would provide more stability for people who are unemployed and searching for work at this difficult time.
Okay, I do know that and whatever ruling I do here will apply to BQ9 as well. Does Mr. St. Marie have anything he wants to add in the argument for either NDP 21 or BQ9?
Oui, en effet, donc, je rappelle que le comité...
Yes, indeed, I do. I remind you that the National Committee of the Unemployed said that there were 2 blind spots in the enactment. This is the second one. And the suggestion here is to use the maximum denominator rather than up to 21 in certain cases. And here we're speaking of the amount that seasonal workers will receive per week, which will be far less due to this blind spot in the proposed legislation. So it's an important amendment that would correct this enactment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you both. The chair's ruling will be as such. The amendment provides for a different method of calculation for weekly insurable earnings, where the insurable earnings would be divided by 14 in all cases rather than a number comprised between 14 and 22, which would result in increased payments from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. The amendment as proposed is inadmissible as it requires a royal recommendation since it imposes a new charge.
Mr. Chair.
Monsieur le Président, vous avez accroché votre bouton.
Mr. Chair, I'm terribly sorry. You seem to have put yourself on mute.
Oh, golly, 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 I am sorry. So I'll start over at the ruling at the beginning. I don't know how that happened. Oh, I know. I put my leg against the mic on the chair, so it shut me out. Okay, I'll do the whole ruling so it's in order. The amendment provides for a different method of calculation of weekly insurable earnings, where the insurable earnings would be divided by 14 in all cases rather than a number comprised between 14 and 22, which would result in increased payments from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. The amendment as proposed is inadmissible as it requires a royal recommendation since it imposes a new charge on the public treasury, and that same ruling applies to BQ9.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I think I'll be appealing your decision, but I do have a question for our witnesses because your ruling specifically states that this would increase payments from the Consolidated Revenue Fund, but it's the employment insurance account that actually pays for employment insurance. So could our witnesses respond to the question, is the employment insurance account separate from the consolidated revenue account, or has this current government basically taken over the employment insurance account?
We'll go to the witnesses, but as I understand it, there's a separate accounting on both, but it is the Consolidated Revenue Fund. Miss Nandy, or whoever wants to answer it from the public service.
Hi there. I'm going to ask if George Ray can be called in to help with this particular question.
Mr. Ray, if you're not in, the clerk will let you in. I see him. There he is. Mr. Ray.
Yeah, so the employment insurance operating account is a fund that is reimbursed and has debits and credits from the Consolidated Revenue Fund.
So when did that happen? The merging. I mean, of course, organized labor has raised this over the years. I think this is the first time that we've had the government openly admit that they've just taken over the employment insurance account. But when did that merging take place so that employment insurance is no longer considered separate and independent of the Consolidated Revenue Fund?
Mr. Ray, as I understand it, it was always a separate accounting. I could be wrong on that, Mr. Julian, but Mr. Ray?
That's correct. It is a separate accounting.
So if it's a separate accounting, how could the ruling be that this has an impact on the Consolidated Revenue account?
Because the Consolidated Revenue Fund either owes EI money or EI owes it.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chair, this actually exposes a deep, dark secret that I'm not sure the government wanted to expose, but it's very clear. Either the employment insurance account has been merged, despite the government protests the contrary, or the employment insurance account continues to be administered separately. If it is administered separately, your ruling, of course, does not stand. If it's been merged together, I think it's important that the public know that. I think the best way for the public to be better informed would be for the committee to overturn your ruling. So I will challenge it.
All right. Thank you. And thank you for your explanation, Mr. Ray. Mr. Clerk, over to you for a polling of the committee.
The question is, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? Ms. Derowitz?
Oui.
Mr. Fragiskatos?
Yes.
Mr. Fraser?
Yes.
Ms. Katrakis?
Yes.
Mr. McLeod?
Yes.
Mr. Falk?
Yes.
Mr. Fast?
Yes.
Ms. Jansen?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie?
No.
Mr. Julian?
No.
Yeas pour 9, nays contre 2.
Okay, the ruling is upheld, and so we will find out where I'm at here. Shall clause 209 carry on division?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
The legislative clerk here?
Yep.
The amendment was creating a new clause 308.1.
Right.
So since those are inadmissible, we go to clause 309.
Yep. Okay. That's right. You are correct. Thank you. On clause 309, is there an explanation here?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I can add that. So it's similar to other subclauses where I've spoken about, where the objective is simply to ensure that all qualified claimants with at least 420 hours of insurable employment can receive sickness benefits for a 1-year period as of September 26, 2021. And the subclause 2 would return the sections of the EI Act that I've just mentioned to their original language and operations. It's rather cumbersome, but this is the way that the drafting process had to work. So that's it for clause 309.
Okay. Shall clause, any discussion? Shall clause 309 carry on division? Okay, I read your lips, Ed, on division. Shall clause on 310?
So if the chair would prefer, clauses 310 to 316 are all consequential amendments that relate to that with the same intent of ensuring that those with sickness benefit or eligible for sickness benefits, can receive sickness benefits with 420 hours, with the definition of major minor attachment claimant being removed from the Act.
Okay, I think we can get agreement on that. Is there any discussion on any questions on 310 to 316? None. Shall clauses 310 to 316 carry on division?
On division.
On division. Carried on division. Then 317, Ms. Nandy or whoever.
It's going to be myself, Mr. Chair, Mona Nandy. So in terms of, I think we're on clause 316, if I'm not mistaken. So if clause 316 for subclause 1, it amends the definition of employment in section 29A of the EI Act. That is used to deal with the qualification and disentitlement rules set out in sections 30 to 33 to a definition that will now only include the claimant's most recent employment or any employment in the benefit period. And the objective of this subclause 1 is to temporarily ensure that a claimant cannot be disqualified or disentitled under sections 30 to 33 based on employment that does not meet this new definition for a 1-year period as of September 26, 2021. And subclause 2, again, reverts to the original language and operations after the end of the 1-year period.
Okay, any questions? Shall clause 317 carry on division?
On division.
On division, 318.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I note that Ms. May does have one amendment, and I believe is that the only one that we're left with?
No, we do have NDP 22, which is in clause 324, and Ms. Mays is on schedule 3.
What if we...
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I think we've already dealt with NDP 22 because that was coupled with NDP 20.
Okay, but we will have to then, we will get to it and we will... We'll ignore it. We'll just make a statement when we're going by it. That's not hard to do.
Okay,
drive by.
Yeah, drive by is great, Mr. Chair. Given the fact that I think we had hoped to have this done by 5:30, if you could use your discretion to lump together all of those clauses that don't have amendments, so that we could pass them on division. And then deal with the remaining amendments. I guess there's 2 left then. Deal with them that way.
We can do that. I do have to remind committee, though, with the agreement we have with the translators, we do have to suspend at 5:30 for 30 minutes. That's the agreement with the translators to go to 8 or to go to 7 Ottawa time, I guess, is it? I'm looking at my clock. Okay, so you can we? Okay, let's deal with 318 to 323. I'll mention in clause 324 the chair's ruling, so we do that properly, and then we will try and block the rest until we get to Division 37. Okay, so. Is there agreement? Shall clause 318 to 323 carry on division?
On division.
On division. On clause 324, there was an NDP amendment already spoken to, and I've ruled it inadmissible. I believe that's been agreed to, so it's inadmissible.
Don't like it, but I accept it.
Okay. Shall clause 324 carry on division?
On division.
Okay. Then shall clauses, I don't believe there's any amendments, shall clause 325 to 360 one carry on division.
On division.
Okay.
Division.
Then we'll bring in folks on Division 37, the Canada Elections Act. Ms. Paquette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Manon Paquette. I'm the Director of Special Project in the PCO's Democratic Institution Secretariat. Clauses 362 relates to Section 91 of the Canada Elections Act, which prohibits specific types of false statements made to affect election results. The amendment would add the word knowingly to the associated offenses to clarify that for that provision to apply, the individual or entity needed to know that the statement was false. It responds to a recent court decision from the Ontario Superior Court.
Any questions on this that relates to clause 362? Any discussion? Ms. Zerwitz.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I want to thank Ms. Paquette for the explanation. Could you tell us a little bit more about the ruling from the Superior Court of Ontario?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. So the court decision was about the constitutionality of Section 91. The court ruled that even though there was a requirement for an intent within the provision itself regarding the intent to affect the outcome of elections, the court judged that the knowledge requirement to know that the statement was false was not clear within the provisions. So the amendment would explicitly include that knowledge requirement.
Thank you. And then a follow-up, if it's okay, Mr. Chair. Can you kindly, Ms. Paquette, just refresh my memory on Section 91?
Of course. So Section 91 prohibits specific types of false statements regarding candidate, prospective candidate, the leader of a political party, or a public figure associated with a political party. It only applies during the election period. And it's for a statement that, for example, one of those persons would have either did something illegal, or a statement regarding citizenship, place of birth, education, or professional qualification. So factually verifiable information.
Thank you. And then just, can I have one more small question, just a definition one?
One more small question, and then Mr. Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you just define for us, what does knowledge requirement mean?
So it would clarify that the individual making the statement needed to know that the statement was false.
Thank you.
And I believe does your explanation also relate to clause 363, so we can deal with these two together?
Clause 63 is about the coming into force, so it comes into force with Royal Assembly.
All right. So Mr. Kelly.
I just quickly wanted to flag, Mr. Chair, that there will not be consent to extend the meeting if we can't get these clauses. We were down to just literally the last bit here. So if we could, if we're not able to adjourn these clauses by 5:30, we'd be prepared to adjourn the meeting so other committees can meet.
The fact is the notice went out from. I'll have to find my notice, but the notice of meeting went out till 8 o'clock, Pat. So it's not a question of.
That was there was agreement to extend that?
We sent the notice out.
I guess I'm just encouraging, since we are down to the last bits here.
The problem is we do have to give. It's the rules with the people doing translation lately. That we do have to give them the 30 minutes. There was an agreement, as I understood. Maybe there's something I don't know, but there was an agreement among the whips that we would go till 8 o'clock tonight, that there would be a 30-minute suspension right now. And the notice of meeting went out for meeting number 53 to be 3:30 till 8 o'clock. I just can't do anything about it. I'm sorry, I can't impose. I can't impose on the agreements with the translators. I just can't.
Just a question.
So you go ahead, Ms. Jansen. I'm sorry about that. I would love to finish, but I just can't.
Do you have a time? Do you have a guesstimate of how much time it will take us to finish?
I would. I don't know how long it'll take on Elizabeth May's amendment, but I expect it'll take us 15, 20 minutes. But the translators are operating under an agreement that they have to have a 30-minute break, like right now. And we run into that the other night. So I will have to suspend for 30 minutes and reconvene in 30 minutes. So I'm sorry about that, but there's just nothing I can do about it in all honesty. So meeting suspended till Ottawa time, 5:32, 6:02 Ottawa time. Sorry about that. Meeting suspended.
Well,
yourselves, we'll call the meeting to order once again. We did have a discussion on clauses 362 and 363. Is there any questions on those discussions? None?
On division.
Shall we see clauses 362 and 363 carried on division?
On division.
Schedule on schedule 1, shall it carry?
On division.
On division.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Fraser. Yours is on schedule 3, I believe, Elizabeth May, but I've Sean Fraser first, and then I have Miss May.
I expect this is the same point of order that Ms. Koutrakis was about to raise. I just think there's a technical issue with the phone lines,
right.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Oh, what's the trouble?
I got a message. Someone trying to dial in can't hear.
Okay.
We're looking into
Okay, look into it, because we got Pat, we got Ed, we got Tamara, we got. Is Mr. Falk here? I don't see him. There he is. There he is.
Oh, I think we're okay.
Yes, the phone lines are okay.
All right, they're looking into it. No, is there any discussion on schedule 1? Shall schedule 1 carry?
On division.
On division. Schedule 2.
On division.
Okay, on division. Carried on division. Schedule 3, and there is an amendment from Ms. May called, I believe, PV1. Ms. May, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The reason, just to briefly remind members, and I know you're all keen to get out of here, that you passed a motion some time ago that requires me to be here if I have amendments. Otherwise, I could have made this at report stage. So I'm here because of your instructions. And a reminder to clerk to please remember in future to give me the 48 hours notice so I can get my amendments in on time pursuant to the motion you passed. So this one's very straightforward. The Prince Edward Island right now, as you can see in the Act, is treated as the region of Charlottetown, consisting of the census agglomeration of Charlottetown and the region of Prince Edward Island, consisting of all census subdivisions that are not part of the census agglomeration of Charlottetown. My amendment is very straightforward, and it is. I'm really speaking to you today on behalf of a number of municipalities in Prince Edward Island, particularly the mayor of Charlottetown, who asked me to try to carry this forward. And I know there are problems, so I want to touch on them briefly. But the message here is one island, one province, one zone. And what is happening here is a number of very odd results. I think Mr. Fraser's aware of the kind of things that sometimes happen in maritime provinces. You can be a few feet from somebody else, and your entitlements under employment insurance can be very, very different. In the case of Prince Edward Island, this is quite a perverse result. Now, I recognize, and I have had notes from Finance Canada, and I actually had a very helpful conversation with the minister, with Carla Qualtrough, that in making the change here, this section deals with the seasonal pilot program and won't solve the larger problem. I took that back to the mayor of Charlottetown, and the concern here is that if we enshrine in the statute these different zones for purposes of EI, it'll make it harder to fix it in regulations. Down the line, the mayor of Charlottetown, Philip Brown, doesn't see how we're going to get to fix this problem any earlier than 2023 if we don't grasp the nettle and try to fix it here. So that's what I'm attempting to do to assist a wonderful province. And we know how wonderful it is because our chair hails from there. And getting this fixed, we will be showered in Malpec oysters, and we will have a grand celebration one of these days. But for now, I put this to you that we have a problem. I know my amendment is controversial in that it is not perfectly suited to fix the problem, but I don't think that the municipalities and the unemployed workers of Prince Edward Island have a better option right now than passing this.
Okay, thank you, Ms. May. We did look at it, and the amendment, the legislative clerk looked at it. The amendment is in order. Mr. Fraser.
Thanks very much, and I'll do my best to be concise. I know Ms. May and I had a conversation about this issue as well, which I was grateful for. The issue around this proposed amendment is that it pertains to a section that only deals with the seasonal pilot program, as Ms. May has quite rightly acknowledged. It's not entirely innocuous, is my my fear. My understanding is that there would be risk if we create a different definition of the zones in Bill C-30 that refers to the seasonal pilot, while the regulations that apply to the ordinary EI zones remain as they are. We could, in an unintended way, actually lead to the perverse consequence where islanders would not be eligible for the seasonal pilot expansion. Just a final point is that, and this is a problem that actually impacts my constituency. I was looking for other ways to address the issue for my own constituents who sometimes work for the same employer, live in the same community, but have access to different EI benefits. The commissioner's review of the program, I understand, is underway, and there will be an opportunity in the medium term, I don't have a specific date for you, to actually address the underlying issue through the regulatory change, which I would submit is the proper course of action rather than amending C-30. I'll leave it to members to decide what they're going to do, but for that reason, with great respect to Ms. May, I'll be voting against the amendment, despite the fact that I want to fix the problem in my own community.
Okay, then we will have to, I expect, to go to a vote on this. Is there any further discussion? No further discussion. Mr. Clerk, could you poll the committee on PB1?
Ms. Derowitz.
Sorry, what's the motion? Do we vote in favor of it or against it?
You vote in favor of it, Julie.
No, I'm sorry. I know I'm voting against the motion. I'm sorry, Ms. May.
I was not articulate enough, I think.
No, you were excellent, Mr. Fraser.
You're fired, Sean. You're fired.
All right. We know we've had a long time.
I should have got Sean to introduce the NDP amendments.
You should have, Peter. All right, to Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Derowitz.
I'm not in favor of the amendment.
Mr. Fragiscatos.
No.
Mr. Fraser.
Against.
Madame Koutrakis.
No.
Mr. McLeod.
No.
Mr. Falk.
No.
Mr. Fast.
No.
Ms. Jensen.
No.
Mr. Kelly.
No.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie.
Oui.
Mr. Julian.
Oui.
Yes pour 2, nays contre 9, 9.
Okay, the amendment is lost. Thank you, Ms. May, for putting that forward, though. Shall Schedule 3 carry on division?
On division.
Yep. Schedule 4, shall it carry on division?
On division.
All right. Then to the short clauses here. Sorry, Mr. Fraser.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, look, I meant to raise this at the beginning of the meeting, though I had a substitute, so I didn't, and I promised not to take long on this. There's one clause during the course of our clause-by-clause exercise that I wanted to raise for the potential opportunity to revisit, and I'd like to propose a short motion and then give just 1 minute explanation as to what it is. It was a motion that relates to Monsieur Sainte-Marie's initial proposed amendment that would have limited the transfer of funding to the Canadian Securities Transition Office to $1. The amendment was defeated, which would have had the effect of ultimately not allowing the organization to operate. The Conservatives sided against the amendment, as did other parties as well, myself also. And subsequently, on the vote on the main motion was defeated, which in effect resulted in the same outcome. I don't know if I view those two outcomes to be at odds, and I was hoping to propose the motion that the results of the vote by the committee on Clause 158 of Bill C-30, an act to implement certain provisions of the budget tabled in Parliament on April 19th, 2021, and other measures be rescinded. If I can boil it down to the Coles notes, This organization, I think, is important. I think it has important impacts on capital markets regulation. I think it has a major opportunity to work with the bank on not only securities regulation, but also with the major banks to strengthen our anti-money laundering regime in Canada. And finally, the reason that I raise it, I would have taken everybody's vote at their word, but it was one of the few things when Prime Minister Harper was in office that I was quite in agreement with when it happened. And I just wanted to give the opportunity for folks to revisit this issue at committee before we deal with the bill in the House. So I'll leave it there. I could repeat the motion in French if that would be for the benefit of the crowd, if the translation wasn't accurate, but I see Mr. St. Marie shaking his head no, so I'll leave my submission there.
Oh, okay, I will have to ask both the clerk and the legislative clerk if this motion is to rescind the results of the vote on, you said clause 158?
158, yes.
158. To be honest with you, I've never dealt with this kind of situation before. So is that motion in order? Can anybody give me some advice? That's why I like it when the clerk and the legislative clerk sits beside me. Who wants to give me some advice, the clerk or Philip? Philip says I would need unanimous consent to allow that. Mr. Fraser, I'll let Mr. St. Marie speak. Go ahead, Mr.
Je vais être contre.
Well, I will not vote for this.
Mr. St. Marie, can you repeat that, please?
Oui.
Yes, I will vote against the motion. You said it required unanimous consent, and I will not vote for it. We've debated it fully. I think that I know what I'm doing. Okay, so we do not have unanimous consent to go back and do that. So then thank you. We don't have an unanimous consent to Mr. Fraser. So we'll come to the bill itself. Shall the short title carry on division?
On division.
Shall the title carry?
On division.
On division. Shall the bill as amended carry? Because we do have a couple of amendments here.
On division.
On division.
Okay. Shall the chair report the bill as amended to the House?
On division.
On division. And shall the committee order a reprint of the bill as amended for the use of the House at report stage? We'd have to do that. Agreed?
On division.
Agreed. Agreed. We don't even need to do that one. And look, folks, that completes the bill, and I will hopefully report the bill to the House tomorrow as amended. Just thank you to the clerk, the legislative clerk, the translators. I know this has been a long ago and very, very technical stuff, but thank you to all the witnesses from numerous departments who did their best to give explanations to us and all the questions that were answered. And thank you to committee members for your endurance, many late evenings and a lot of reading and a lot of research and listening to a lot of witnesses.
Can I say, I'm sort of your mascot because I don't have any status. I just want to take my hat off to all of you. This is a well-run committee. It does really good work, really listens and does the work. So to all of you, I just want to add my thanks as a Canadian citizen.
Good. Thanks, Ms. May. So with that,
and
folks,
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to also extend my thanks to all our committee members, to all the clerks, the legislative clerk, everybody that's really helped us along, and for the thoughtful debates and conversations that we've had. As an elected MP in 2019, I have to tell you, this is quite the experience for me, and thank you so much for allowing me to learn from all of you. And thank you to the translators and to everybody that made this happen.
Good
stuff. On our behalf, yeah.
With thank you all. With that, meeting adjourned, and we shall see you all in the House. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned. We'll have a steering committee next Tuesday, I believe, likely. Okay, meeting adjourned. Bye bye.